I stood watching my daughter-in-law Lisa throw a suitcase into the lake without a second thought, then drive off without looking back. My heart stopped as the suitcase sank into the water. I rushed to the lake's edge, but when I pulled the suitcase up, I couldn't believe my eyes. Inside was a weak, crying baby. Why would Lisa do this? Can this baby survive? What is hidden behind her actions? I'm Nina Thompson, a 45-year-old Black woman born and raised in the United States, living in a world that demands strength and resilience. My life is not a fairy tale, but it's built on efforts, sacrifices, and the love I have for those I care about. As an independent woman, I've had to face challenges on my own to take care of my children and keep our family strong. My life has always been busy without much time for rest, but among everything I do, the one thing I cherish the most is my family. In the eyes of others, I might seem like a woman of steel, never showing weakness or fear. In truth, I've had to learn to be strong since I was a little girl. Not because I didn't want to be weak, but because if I wasn't strong, I couldn't protect the people I love. My son Marcus is my greatest pride in life. He grew up in a difficult environment, but I always taught him to stand on his own. Lisa, my daughter-in-law, though not my biological daughter, I love her as if she were my own. I see in Lisa a fragile side, a woman who doesn't easily express her emotions, but I've always believed she has a warm heart. Every day I wake up early, take care of the house and the family. I do everything from cooking to driving my kids to school, even though my own work is never light. After a long day, I still make sure every meal is prepared, even if it's just a simple dish. I believe that love in every meal, in every small action, will bring the family closer together. But life isn't always full of joy and happiness. There are challenges I have to face, sometimes fears I can't avoid. Every time I look into Marcus's eyes, I can't help but worry about his future. With Lisa, I always feel a strange distance. Even though she's my son's wife, I don't fully understand her thoughts and feelings. But still, I try to create a safe space for her, a place where she can find comfort and share her burdens. Our life goes on like this, calm, yet filled with love. Everything is fine, rarely any major disruptions. However, I had no idea that one day the peaceful life we had would be shattered by an event no one could foresee. An event that would force me to face painful questions about my family, my daughter-in-law, and even myself. Each morning, I have a habit of sitting with a cup of coffee on the porch, gazing at the small garden in front of the house. It's the only quiet moment of the day when I can breathe deeply and feel the pulse of life. After that, everything becomes responsibility, all the burdens I carry. I think about Marcus, about what I can do to ensure a brighter future for him. I think about Lisa, about the things I've never truly understood about her, and I wonder, can I protect my family forever when the world outside is filled with unexpected dangers? Everything continues like this until one afternoon when I took a walk near the lake and accidentally witnessed a scene that would change my life forever. That was when everything came crashing down. I saw my daughter-in-law Lisa throw a suitcase into the lake and drive off without a second glance. In that moment, a chill ran through me. What is happening? Why would Lisa do this? And what could be in that suitcase that made her act this way? I couldn't just stand there. Despite my tired legs, despite my mind not yet processing what I had just witnessed, I quickly rushed to the lake. Everything seemed to slow down, as if time had stopped. The black suitcase floated on the water, an ominous sign of something terrible to come. In my mind, a wave of panic surged. Something serious was happening, and I couldn't ignore it. I fought through the muddy bank, pulling the suitcase to the shore. My hands were sweaty, my heart filled with fear. It was too late to turn back, too late to stop now. I opened the suitcase. And then what I saw inside made my heart drop. A newborn baby, weak, crying softly in a wet blanket. I couldn't believe it. I reached out with trembling hands to hold the baby in my arms. My heart felt like it was breaking, and I could only pray, God, please don't let this be real. That was the moment everything changed. Our lives would never be the same again. One spring afternoon when I was walking near the lake close to home, I had no idea that my peaceful life would be shattered by a sight I would never forget. A sense of unease and anxiety rose in me when I saw Lisa's car, my daughter-in-law's, roll down the quiet road. She stopped by the lake, the place I often visited, for a moment of peace. My steps slowed and I stopped watching, unable to believe what I was about to witness. Lisa didn't look back, her eyes fixed ahead, as if unaware that someone was watching. She opened her trunk and pulled out a black leather suitcase. Her movements were hasty, as though something was forcing her to act. I only managed to catch a glimpse of her eyes filled with panic, as if she couldn't do anything but follow some unseen command. A cold sensation grew inside me, and when she threw the suitcase into the lake with force, I couldn't utter a word. The suitcase flew through the air, hitting the water with a distinct splash. Time seemed to stop for a moment. Lisa turned quickly, heading back to her car and driving off without hesitation. No second glance, no sign of remorse, she simply left in silence. A sense of dread surged within me, making me feel as if I had just witnessed a dark secret that I couldn't understand. What could have made her do this? What could possibly be inside that suitcase to make her act this way? My heart pounded in my chest, and I couldn't stand still watching that scene. A wave of fear overtook me, but I knew I couldn't hesitate. Curiosity and worry pushed me to act immediately. I turned and rushed to the suitcase, which was now floating helplessly in the water. Despite the muddy ground beneath my feet and the soft breeze, I had only one thought. I had to know. I had to understand why Lisa had done this. My palms were damp with sweat, and I felt as if my feet were glued to the ground as I approached the lake's edge. But I couldn't stop. I had to keep going, not giving myself time to think too much. When I finally pulled the suitcase from the water, I could hardly breathe. It was heavy, soaked through, and felt incredibly cumbersome in my hands. I struggled to pull it onto the shore, my hands trembling to the point of almost dropping it. A lump rose in my throat, but I couldn't let go. I didn't know what awaited inside, but I knew I had to open it. My eyes blurred with tears from fear and disbelief. But when I opened the suitcase, what I saw made my heart stop. A newborn baby, weak, huddled in a damp blanket. The baby cried softly, its cries weak, not strong enough to break through the silence. Time stood still. A cold shiver ran down my spine. I didn't know what to do. I just held the baby tightly, not because I didn't understand, but because I couldn't accept this truth. The baby had no strength. Its skin was red from the cold, its eyes wide open, looking at me as if it didn't understand what was happening. Every movement I made, the baby shuddered as though it was searching for safety in my arms. "Oh God, what is this?" I whispered, my mouth trembling, my hands drenched in sweat. How could I believe this? How could I understand that Lisa, the daughter-in-law I had loved, had thrown this baby into the lake? The moments dragged on like they were a century long. A soft breeze blew, making the atmosphere even quieter, leaving only the faint cry of the baby in my arms. Not knowing what to do, I could only hold the baby tightly, hoping it wouldn't suffer any more harm. Worry surged inside me, my heart pounding in my chest. Where did this baby come from? Why did Lisa abandon it? And why did I have to witness this? A sense of helplessness engulfed me, but I couldn't stay still. Though the world around me was falling apart, though my heart was filled with a storm of emotions, I could only do one thing: save the baby. Without thinking further, I quickly called for help, asking them to come immediately. While waiting, I could only sit beside the baby, holding it tightly, comforting it. I wanted it to feel safe in my arms because I knew at that moment I was the only one who could protect it. The baby's gaze made me feel a deep sorrow. Yes, my life had never been easy, but I had never faced anything like this. How could I explain Lisa's actions? How could I understand the pain she had endured to lead to this decision? In one moment, I felt as though everything in my life had crumbled, and I was left alone, unsure of what to do next. But no matter what, I would do everything I could to protect this baby, not let it suffer anymore. I had to know the truth, and I wouldn't let anything hide it. I didn't know how to breathe when I saw the suitcase drifting aimlessly on the surface of the lake, each wave crashing against the shore, pushing it further away. It felt like the weight of the world was bearing down on my hands. Even though my body was exhausted after a long day, my heart wouldn't let me stop. The child inside that suitcase was waiting for me. I couldn't let it float away. I couldn't abandon it. I stepped toward the lake's edge, my feet sinking into the muddy ground, each step becoming more difficult. Waves hit my body, knocking me off balance, but I couldn't stop. My eyes were fixed on the suitcase, drifting further. I forced myself forward, fighting the current, hoping I could pull it up. Every second felt like a challenge. I had to act faster. I had to rescue the baby inside. I didn't know if it was still alive, but I couldn't let it sink into the cold water. The mud clung to my legs, making it even harder to move, but my concern pushed me through everything, and I gave all my strength to pull the suitcase from the water. The waves battered me, but I couldn't let go, couldn't give up. It felt like some unseen force was pushing me forward, something stronger than all the fear and anxiety inside me. At that moment, all I could think about was the baby inside the suitcase, and I knew I had to save it. After what felt like an eternity of struggling with the mud and water, I finally pulled the suitcase onto the shore. I collapsed onto the ground, my hands trembling from exhaustion and tension. There was no time to rest, no time to let even a second slip by. The baby was still in danger. I quickly unzipped the suitcase, my fingers shaking uncontrollably. My breath was ragged, my eyes glued to the suitcase, unwilling to take a step back. When the suitcase opened, everything seemed to stop. I wasn't sure if I was imagining things, but before me was a newborn baby, weak and helpless, curled up in a soaked blanket, its tiny body frail, lips blue from the cold. The baby's faint cries broke the stillness of the lake. It sounded weak, as if it only had enough strength to let out a feeble cry. My heart seemed to stop. I couldn't believe what was happening. My whole body went numb, but my hands couldn't let go of the baby. Fear and helplessness overwhelmed me. How could Lisa have done this? How could she throw this baby into the lake? Why? Why would she do this? These questions spun around in my mind unanswered. I bent down and gently cradled the baby in my arms. My hands trembled as I felt the cold from its body, but I couldn't let it suffer any more from the freezing cold. I knew I had to act immediately. I couldn't wait another second. The baby couldn't continue to endure. It needed care, it needed warmth, and it needed to be saved. I quickly grabbed my phone and called for an ambulance, my heart full of worry and fear. "We need help. A newborn baby has been abandoned in the lake," I said urgently, my voice shaking. I knew that no matter how quickly they arrived, it wouldn't be faster than the rising panic inside me. But no matter what, I kept the baby firmly in my arms. It needed me. I had to protect it, even though I didn't fully understand why I was here or why my daughter-in-law had thrown the baby into the lake. I would do everything I could. I couldn't stand still. I couldn't leave it alone in this cold. The baby grew weaker in my arms, and I could feel its every shallow breath. "Don't worry, you'll be okay," I whispered into the baby's ear, trying to comfort it, although I wasn't sure it would survive. When I looked into the baby's eyes, I saw innocence and fear. It didn't understand what was happening, didn't understand why it had been abandoned. My heart ached as I thought about what this baby might have gone through. But no matter what, I wouldn't let it suffer anymore. I would do everything to save this baby, no matter what happened next. A short while later, the ambulance arrived and the paramedics quickly assessed the baby's condition. They immediately took the baby and began applying the necessary measures to warm it up. I stood back watching them, a sense of relief slowly washing over me. But the questions in my mind still hadn't been answered. Why did Lisa do this? What drove her to act this way? And where did this baby come from? Those questions still hung in the air unanswered. I knew I couldn't let go. I couldn't stop searching for the truth. This couldn't just be an accident or a mistake. There was some dark secret I hadn't uncovered yet, and I couldn't let it go without finding out. The tension still clung to me, and I knew this was just the beginning of a journey full of challenges and difficulties. I couldn't believe what I had just witnessed. Standing there in the midst of the muddy lakeshore, I looked at the suitcase I had just pulled from the water. It was still soaking wet, but what I couldn't shake from my mind was the baby. A newborn, weak and utterly helpless, curled up in the suitcase, only able to cry faintly, its eyes filled with confusion and fear. My entire body froze, unable to move, unable to breathe. I thought I was going to pass out, but no, I couldn't. I had to do something. I had to save this baby. Just a moment ago, I had been standing there watching the baby, not knowing what to do. Each step I took toward it felt like an impossible challenge. My hands were shaking, and I couldn't control the fear inside me. The baby lay there in the suitcase, a horrifying scene of an action I couldn't understand. It was just a newborn. How could it protect itself in this situation? My heart ached as I saw the baby's fragility and innocence. How could anyone, a mother, a relative, do something like this? Why did Lisa do this? That was the only question spinning in my mind, one I couldn't stop thinking about. How could she throw this baby into the lake as if it were just an object to be discarded, not worthy of care or love? The shock of it all made it impossible for me to think clearly. I looked at the baby, my hands trembling as I touched its cold skin. The chill from its body made my heart tighten, and it made me feel like I was standing on a precipice I couldn't turn back from. The confusion and anxiety pushed me into a foggy space. How could this be happening? I had taught Marcus. I had taught Lisa about the love of family, about protection and care, and yet now I was witnessing this. Had I failed to see something earlier? Did I miss the signs that I should have noticed sooner? A sense of guilt stirred within me, even though I hadn't done anything wrong. But I couldn't help but ask myself, how could I have let this happen without realizing? I couldn't just stand there. I couldn't just watch and do nothing. This baby needed me, and I had to help it. I knew rescuing the baby wouldn't be easy, but I couldn't give up. It couldn't endure anymore. Its breath was weak, its tiny body struggling against the harsh cold, and I couldn't leave it alone in this condition. The guilt and worry swirled around me, but I knew I had to act. I gently lifted the baby from the suitcase, feeling how small and fragile it was in my hands, as if it might melt away the instant I didn't hold on tight enough. My hands were shaking, but I tried to keep the baby steady. I wrapped it in my coat, trying to keep it warm. Every movement was careful, as if I was afraid that if I acted too quickly, the baby would disappear like a bad dream. But the baby continued to cry its faint sobs, not strong enough to shatter the silence of the lake. I drew the baby closer, as if I were seeking comfort from it. The warmth of its tiny body gave me a little peace, even though I knew it was still in very serious danger. When I called for help, my voice was also shaking, though I tried to remain calm. "There's a newborn baby abandoned in the lake," I said, struggling to keep my emotions in check. "It needs immediate help. Please come quickly." The words seemed to leave my mouth as if they were being dragged out, but I knew I had to stay strong. I couldn't let this baby endure another minute of suffering. Fear still clung to me, but all I could do was protect it, even though I didn't understand why Lisa had done this. My eyes never left the baby, even though I could hear distant sounds, the wind and the distant calls of the rescue team, but all of that felt like a mist around me. I couldn't think of anything else but the baby in my arms. My worry over its condition kept me from staying still. The feeling of helplessness rose up inside me, but I couldn't let myself give up. This baby couldn't be a victim of such senseless abandonment. I wouldn't leave it alone in this world. The tension in my chest was indescribable. The stillness of the lake now felt like a complete contrast to the chaotic emotions inside me. Each minute passed was a test. I had to hold this baby tightly so it would feel safe, so it wouldn't feel the cold or the despair. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew I couldn't turn back. Every second that passed, I felt a stronger connection to this baby, and the feelings of guilt and confusion seemed to be pushed aside. This baby needed me, and I couldn't give up on it. Not ever. I couldn't stop looking at the baby in my arms. It was huddled against me, its body frail and so cold. Its weak cries echoed in the darkness of the night, like the sighs of a life just beginning, yet already having to endure so much. My heart was filled with anxiety and fear, but I knew I couldn't hesitate any longer. I had to save this baby. I had to do something immediately. With a short, frantic breath, I pulled out my phone, my hand shaking, but I still tried to remain calm. "Emergency! I need help urgently." My voice rang out through the speaker, but it sounded strangled. I fought to suppress the fear swirling in my chest, each word coming out with difficulty. "There's a newborn baby abandoned in a lake. It's very weak. It needs immediate help." The voice of the dispatcher on the other end of the line was full of concern, but still calm. "Don't worry, we'll be there right away. Keep the baby warm and try to stay calm while waiting." I couldn't allow myself to stop, couldn't just stand there waiting hopelessly. I had to do something. I had to get the baby to the hospital right away. I didn't know how much longer it could hold on. I hurriedly placed the baby in the car, gently strapping it in, even though I knew that doing so wouldn't protect it from the cold seeping into its tiny body. But at least I could try to do everything I could to help it. The drive to the hospital felt like it took forever. Each time a traffic light turned red, each time a car in front of me forced me to stop, my anxiety rose. Every second, every minute passed, and I felt like I was living in a nightmare. The baby in my arms kept crying, those weak cries reverberating, making my heart tighten. I couldn't stop wondering, would this baby survive? Would it have the strength to overcome what it had just endured? When I arrived at the hospital, the emergency room doors swung open, and the doctors and nurses immediately rushed to meet me. "The baby was abandoned in the lake. It might have suffered severe hypothermia," I said quickly, trying to communicate the information as fast as I could. The people around me began working immediately. A male doctor quickly took the baby from my arms, examining it professionally, but his eyes also betrayed his concern. I stood outside the emergency room, powerless to do anything but wait. The minutes felt like hours, each passing second cutting into my heart. Every step the doctor took, every sound from inside the room made me feel more tense. How could I be at ease when the baby was still facing danger, with so much unknown about its condition? Would it survive? Could it pull through everything it had just been through? I started thinking about Lisa, about how she acted, about the indifference she must have felt. How could a mother throw her own child into a suitcase and then abandon it like that? Did she not feel anything when she saw that baby in that suitcase? Every thought was like a knife stabbing into my heart. I couldn't understand. I couldn't grasp what had happened to Lisa, why she could do something like this. The emergency room door opened and a doctor stepped out. He looked at me with a serious expression, and I felt my body freeze, unable to breathe. "The baby's condition is quite serious," the doctor said. "It's severely hypothermic and showing signs of exhaustion, but we've applied emergency measures and are monitoring it closely. Right now, the baby is stable, but it will still need further observation." A wave of relief washed over me, but it couldn't fully erase the worry in my heart. Even though the doctor said the baby was stable, I couldn't rest easy. Every time I thought about what it had gone through, about the suffering it must have endured during the time it was abandoned, my heart tightened. I couldn't stop asking myself, would the baby have to endure more pain? Would it be able to live a peaceful life in the future? Conflicting emotions filled me, making it impossible for me to leave the hospital. I decided to stay with the baby, even though the doctors had advised me to go home and get some rest. But I couldn't. I couldn't leave this child alone when it was still so fragile and needed care. I couldn't stop thinking about its future. Who would take care of it later on? Would it ever find the love it truly deserved? And most importantly, I couldn't stop thinking about Lisa, about why she abandoned the baby. Could I help her overcome her suffering, help her find herself again? Nightfall came, and the hospital grew quiet. People slowly left, but I stayed there, next to the baby, watching it sleep peacefully in my arms. The thoughts about this baby's future kept swirling around in my mind. But at least in this moment, I knew that I had done everything I could to save it. After the baby was stable, I couldn't stop thinking about everything that had happened. It was still in the intensive care unit, but at least I could breathe a little easier knowing it hadn't died in that suitcase. I couldn't let this go without understanding the truth. What I needed were answers. How could Lisa, whom I had always considered as my own daughter, do something like this? Why did she throw a newborn baby into the lake without hesitation? That whole night, I couldn't sleep. The questions kept spinning around in my head, and I couldn't come up with a logical answer. Despite trying many times to control my emotions, I still couldn't understand Lisa's actions. I had watched her grow up with Marcus, seen every step she took in life, and now I was faced with such a harsh truth. Had I missed some signs that she was suffering? Had I trusted her too much and failed to see what she was carrying on her shoulders? The next morning, I decided that I had to confront Lisa. Although I was fearful, anxious about what she might say, I couldn't live with this uncertainty any longer. I needed to understand why my daughter-in-law had acted this way. Lisa had been avoiding me since the night before. No calls, no messages. This only made me more worried, but I knew I couldn't wait any longer. I drove to Lisa's apartment, my heart pounding as I thought about the meeting. Everything felt like it was moving in slow motion in my chest, the tension building up. She didn't know I was coming, and I couldn't guess how she would react. When I stood in front of her door, I could hear some sounds from inside. A part of me wanted to turn back to avoid facing the truth, but another part urged me forward. I pressed the doorbell. Lisa opened the door, her eyes red from lack of sleep, her hair disheveled, her face betraying a look of panic and fear. When she saw me, she didn't say anything at first. She just stood there silently, as if not knowing what to do. I couldn't wait any longer, couldn't let this silence stretch on. "Lisa," I said, my voice firm yet filled with pain. "Why did you do this? Why did you throw the baby into the lake? It's your child. How could you do this?" Lisa didn't answer. Her eyes were filled with tears, but she didn't cry. Instead, she silently stepped back into the apartment. I followed her inside without saying another word. The apartment was quiet. Only the sound of our labored breathing filled the air. I didn't know where to start, but I knew I couldn't give up. I had to know the truth. After a long silence, Lisa finally spoke, her voice weak as though each word was coming out with great difficulty. "Mom," she started, her voice trembling. "I didn't want to do it, but I had no other choice." She paused, her eyes staring off into the distance, as if searching for an explanation. "I was threatened. They forced me to do it. A group of people, Mom. They said that if I didn't abandon the baby, if I didn't do what they told me, they would hurt Marcus. They would kill him." She broke down in tears, collapsing onto the couch, her hands clutching her head. It felt like a weight was pressing down on my chest. Suddenly, everything became clearer, but it was also terrifying. What Lisa had just said made my ears ring. A group of criminals threatening her family, even Marcus's life, my son? How could she have been forced to face these people with no one to help her? How could I not have known she had been living in fear and anxiety all this time? Lisa wasn't a bad person. She didn't deserve this. "I had no choice, Mom," Lisa sobbed. "They told me I had to get rid of the baby or everything would end much worse. I thought I could hide it all, that I could handle it alone. But now I know I can't. I'm scared they'll hurt us." Her voice choked with pain. The anguish in her words broke my heart. I sat beside her, unsure of what to say. Everything was so complicated, so dire. Lisa had been threatened, and those people could be very dangerous. She wasn't just afraid of Marcus's death, but she had also been forced to hurt her own child. She might not have wanted to do it, but she was cornered, left with no choice but to comply with their demands. I placed my hand on Lisa's shoulder, trying to comfort her. "We'll sort this out, Lisa," I said, my voice resolute. "We'll figure out a way to get rid of these people. You don't have to do this alone." Even though I felt anxious, even though I didn't know what to do, I knew that I couldn't let Lisa suffer any longer. Both of us sat silently in the living room, each lost in our own thoughts. I didn't know how to confront these people, how to protect Lisa and Marcus, but I knew that I wouldn't give up. Lisa's story was only a part of a much darker secret that I hadn't uncovered fully, but I wouldn't let it slip away without finding out the truth. I sat there beside Lisa, my heart heavy. Everything she had just shared with me shattered everything inside. Lisa didn't do this out of hate or selfishness. She was threatened, forced into a situation she couldn't escape from. How could I blame her? How could I harbor anger towards a woman who was struggling with evil people, facing dangers beyond her control? There were moments when I wanted to ask her more, to push her into a corner and demand the truth immediately. But when I looked into Lisa's eyes, I saw fear, regret, and guilt mixed together. I couldn't blame her. I could only feel and understand. Despite the pain gnawing at my heart, I knew that blaming her wouldn't help. Instead, I had to help her. Lisa was not a bad person. She was a mother, a wife, a woman who had been backed into a corner with no other choice but to sacrifice herself to protect her family. Those bad people had found a way to control and threaten her, exploiting her fear to force her into doing unimaginable things. But no matter what, I knew I had to protect her. I had to protect her family. I wouldn't let Lisa suffer alone. I wouldn't let her endure what I couldn't bear. Lisa sat beside me, her face now showing exhaustion, as if every burden in life had been placed on her shoulders. She was no longer the daughter-in-law I once knew, a strong girl who always tried to keep up a brave front. Now she looked like a child, a person searching for redemption from the guilt she hadn't brought upon herself. I gently took her hand, soothing her as best as I could. "Lisa, you don't have to do it all alone," I said, my voice soft but firm. "I'll help you. I promise, I'll help you get out of this situation with those bad people. You don't have to live in fear anymore." My words felt like a promise, a vow that I couldn't break. I had loved Lisa for a long time, not just because she was my daughter-in-law, but because I saw in her a good soul, a sincere heart. Even though she might have made mistakes with her actions, those mistakes weren't born of malice, but of circumstances, of the pressure from those evil people. She needed help, and I would be the one to protect her, no matter the dangers we might face. Though I didn't know everything Lisa had gone through, I knew she didn't deserve to live in such fear. No one deserved to be threatened, to be forced into committing cruel acts by wicked people. And I couldn't leave her alone to face those people. Lisa might have thought that there was no way out, that she had to continue living in the darkness of fear. But I would help her find the light, help her step out of this nightmare. "You won't have to do this anymore," I continued, my hand gripping Lisa's tightly. "I'll help you. I'll help you face those who have made you suffer. We'll fight this together." My words weren't just a promise, they were protection, an assurance that I wouldn't let her suffer alone. I didn't care who those people were. I didn't care how powerful they were, but I wouldn't let them harm my family. Lisa looked at me, her eyes full of tears. Those tears didn't speak of weakness, but of gratitude, of relief from the burden she had been carrying for so long. "Thank you, Mom," she choked. "I don't know what I would have done without you." Lisa's words made my heart tighten. No one should have to endure this, and now I had made up my mind to do everything I could to help her escape this situation. Looking into Lisa's eyes, I knew we were entering a battle that wouldn't be easy. The people threatening her family weren't easy to defeat, but I wouldn't let them win. I would do everything to protect Lisa Marcus and the baby. We wouldn't suffer for one more day. We would fight and do everything in our power to protect the family, to bring Lisa the freedom and happiness she deserved. We won't give up. I added my voice, unwavering. Together, we will get through this. I won't let you face this alone. Lisa nodded, as though the trust in her eyes had been restored. She no longer felt alone, no longer felt abandoned in fear. With me here, with all of us together, she wouldn't have to endure any more. We would do everything to protect our family, and I wouldn't stop until Lisa found the peace she deserved. Now, we were no longer trapped in fear. We would face the truth, face the bad people, and I promised I would help Lisa escape them. Nothing would stop us. The feeling of protecting my family, of protecting my loved ones, made me stronger than ever. Everything changed after I promised Lisa that I would protect her. While my heart was filled with worry and fear about the people threatening her family, I knew I couldn't turn back, couldn't ignore the truth I had to face. From this point on, nothing would be easy. I had made up my mind, not just for myself, but for everyone I loved. I had to find a way to expose these evil people and put an end to the threat once and for all. Lisa and I began discussing what we could do. She was still scared. Her eyes filled with anxiety every time I mentioned confronting these people, but I could see a glimmer of light in her eyes, a new hope. I couldn't let her face this fear alone anymore. I couldn't let her endure another day of this. No matter what I had to do, I wouldn't back down. I knew that when facing these enemies, only strength and determination could help us win. We started investigating. Unable to trust anyone but ourselves, Lisa and I began gathering information about the group that had threatened her. Every lead was vague. We didn't know much about them, except that they were powerful people who could manipulate and threaten others without fear. The first pieces of the puzzle began to form when Lisa told me about the secret meetings, the threats she received over the phone, and how this group had been following her. Both of us knew that the only way to bring the truth to light was to confront these bad people directly and force them to reveal everything. But I understood that this was an incredibly dangerous decision. They were not easy people to defeat. We didn't have much time, and every mistake could cost us everything. I looked at Lisa and nodded. We both knew there was no turning back. If we did nothing, these people would continue threatening her family and could hurt even more people. Over the next few days, we worked quietly behind the scenes. Lisa helped me gather information about the secret meetings, while I secretly followed people she suspected were linked to the bad group. I couldn't trust anyone but myself, but sometimes I felt like I couldn't fight this battle alone. My world had suddenly become unclear, full of unpredictable dangers. The tension rose each day as Lisa and I followed the faint traces to uncover the truth. One evening, while sifting through the notes we had collected, I noticed a small but important detail. One of the people Lisa had met before was linked to a security company, and these people had connections to a notorious criminal in the city. My vague suspicions began to clear. These connections weren't just coincidental, and I realized this could be the key to exposing these bad people. We decided to act. That night, we prepared for an important meeting. Lisa would confront these people directly, and I would be by her side, not letting her face this alone. Every plan had been set, and I knew this was our only chance to clarify everything. But the anxiety wouldn't leave me. Every time I thought about the meeting, my whole body tensed, as if I were standing on a threshold I couldn't cross back from. The next day, we arrived at the meeting place. An abandoned house located far outside the city was where we had discovered previous encounters. Both of us knew that if we were caught, everything would end quickly. Nothing was certain. Everything could change in a split second. I tried to keep my mind clear, but as soon as we stepped onto the property of the house, I could feel the tension in the air. Something was wrong. Everything was too quiet. An eerie feeling seemed to blanket the place, as if everything was being hidden underground. Lisa walked beside me, her footsteps echoing in the silence. I could see the fear in her face, but she walked with determination. She didn't hesitate, no doubt in her eyes. It was a resolve I hadn't seen in her before. We reached the room inside the house, and everything seemed to be prepared. A group of people sat around a table, silently watching us as we entered. I could feel the danger in the air. These people were not easy to defeat. As Lisa and I faced them, the tension soared with every passing second. One of the men stood up, his eyes fixed on us. "Hello, we knew you'd come," he said, his voice cold and threatening. There was nothing in his eyes but cruelty and power. But I wasn't afraid. I knew what I had to do. I couldn't let I couldn't let her family live in this threat any longer. I stood tall, looking directly into the man's eyes and said, "You were wrong to think you could control us. This ends here." The tense moments passed, but I knew one thing: no matter what, I wouldn't let them continue. We would do everything to protect our family, and the truth would be revealed. Finally, everything came to an end, and I could feel the shift in the air. After all the tension, exhaustion, and unspoken fears, We had done it. What began in the shadows, the dark secrets that Lisa and my family had endured, was finally brought to light. Lisa and I had fought together, knowing the path ahead was filled with danger, but nothing could stop us. Determination, courage, and love had helped us overcome every obstacle. We had prepared meticulously every step, every word, every piece of evidence we had collected during our investigation. The bad people hadn't anticipated that we would expose all their secrets. They thought they could manipulate and threaten us, but I didn't let them win. Together with Lisa, we had gathered enough evidence to take down these villains, bring the truth into the open. The underground connections, the shady dealings we uncovered, were now in the hands of those with the power to deal with them. They could no longer escape justice. As we faced the group of villains, I could sense the tension in the air. These people, though unaware of what I was about to do, knew their time had run out. Thanks to Lisa's decisiveness and the crucial information she had provided, I knew we had succeeded. This fight wasn't just against our enemies. It was a fight for justice for our family, for ourselves. These people couldn't continue to threaten us or anyone else. When the villains were finally exposed, arrested, and processed, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. How long had I lived in fear, knowing these dangers could resurface at any moment? How long had I worried about my family's safety? But now, as I watched these bad people face justice, I felt like the weight had been lifted. Finally, the truth had triumphed. We no longer had to live in the shadows, no longer had to fear every day. Lisa sat beside me, her eyes shining with happiness. She had been through so much, endured so much fear, but now she could finally breathe a sigh of relief. The baby, the one she had once abandoned, was now being cared for in a safe environment, and I knew it would have a bright future ahead. With each passing moment, the relief in my heart became clearer. I no longer had to worry about the unpredictable dangers. We had protected each other, helped each other overcome the worst challenges. And now, after everything, we could live in peace. The moment I saw Lisa holding the baby in her arms, I couldn't help but feel deeply moved. She had endured so much, and now she could finally smile, a true smile. She no longer had to live in fear, no longer had to run. The entire family had at last found peace. We had fought for this, and nothing could take this joy away. We sat together in the cozy room, the baby peacefully sleeping in Lisa's arms. The soft laughter filled the air, full of joy despite its quiet nature. I looked at my daughter-in-law, her eyes no longer filled with confusion or fear as they had been before. Instead, there was peace, confidence that she had lost long ago, now returning. I knew that things would never be the same again, but I also understood that we had overcome the worst trials, and now we could start anew. When it was all over, when the bad people no longer threatened us, I felt like I had weathered a massive storm. But after the storm, the sky clears, and now my family could find that light once more. I hugged Lisa, feeling the warmth from her, from the baby in her arms, and from myself. Nothing could replace the love and unity in our family. Nothing was more important than that. And though we had faced countless challenges, in the end, we had found peace, safety, and the happiness we all deserved. I looked at the baby, at the future it would have. It would never have to live in fear. It would have a bright life ahead of it. And when I thought about everything we had been through, I knew we had done the right thing. We had protected our family, protected the love and happiness we shared. This was our victory, the victory of truth and justice. Everything had changed since the day we fought to protect our family, but nothing changed more quickly than the revival of the baby. That tiny life, the one I had seen abandoned in the suitcase, was now growing strong and healthy in the arms of our family. Watching it grow every day felt like a miracle, a clear testament to the power of love and sacrifice. I couldn't help but wonder, if it hadn't been for Lisa's determination and bravery, would this baby have had a chance to live and grow like it does today? And if it hadn't been for the love and unity in our family, could we have overcome the terrifying challenges we faced? When the baby came home, our lives changed in ways I never imagined. It wasn't just a child, it was a symbol of hope, a light in the darkness of all the suffering our family had endured. Every day, watching it play, watching it smile, I felt a happiness I could never put into words. Its health, its joy, the sparkle in its eyes, these were all the affirmations that Lisa and I needed to know that we had done the right thing. Lisa began to find herself again. She was no longer the frightened woman who lived in the shadow of threats and fear. Instead, she was the strong mother, the resilient woman I knew she could become. I could see the confidence in her eyes, not because what we had been through was over, but because she knew that no matter where life took her, she would always have a family to love and protect. I had witnessed Lisa's transformation from a scared and confused girl to a loving and strong mother. She had not only regained her inner peace, but had also found the strength to rebuild her life, to nurture the baby, and to rebuild her family. We had decided not to let the past control us anymore. No matter how deep the wounds were, they would be part of our story, but they didn't define us. Lisa and I worked together to rebuild our lives. Every new day was a chance to start over. Our family had weathered the storm, and now we could live in the peace we deserved. One beautiful morning, as the sunlight streamed through the window, I sat beside Lisa, the baby resting in my arms. We didn't speak. We just savored the quiet and warmth in the space. Sometimes moments like this are all we need to know that we have found peace. What we had gone through, the trials we faced, were now just memories of a difficult journey. We had found peace not because we no longer had to endure, but because we knew that love and unity were what truly endure. Looking at the baby in my arms, I realized that no matter how many storms life brought, the love and strength of family would always be the light that guided us through every challenge. The baby, with its innocent smiles and once weak cries, had now become an important part of our family, a symbol of what we had fought so hard to achieve. It would never have to live in fear. It would never face the challenges we once did. It would grow up in love in a strong family and would learn that love is the only thing that can overcome everything. When I looked into Lisa's eyes, I knew we had done the right thing. Although the road ahead was still long, I no longer felt afraid. We had overcome every challenge life had thrown at us, and now we would never let anyone break the happiness we had rebuilt. We had won this battle, and more importantly, we no longer felt alone in this world. In the morning light, as the baby smiled in my arms, I felt a deep happiness in my heart. It was the happiness of a united family, the joy of a family that had weathered storms and found hope. Though the past had been filled with pain, I knew we had overcome it, and now peace was the well-earned reward for everything we had fought for. Love and unity were the things that would guide us through every challenge in the future.